Mhm. Okay, so we are on day 11. The we're dealing with 2D arrays. So a 2D array, I'm going to go into it, but it is an array within an array, essentially. So thus far, we've seen arrays printed horizontally. 2D array would be a vertical array, and then the second dimension or the nested array, like the array within the array, would be the horizontal array that is stored within the indice of the vertical arrays. So like if we had one array and we have one or 0 through 5 right here, because it's 6 by 6, so 0 through 5, the original I that we've been dealing with in a single array is going to be vertical, and then the J, which is the second array, nested within that one is going to be all these little horizontal ones that we see. And as it's printed right here, we only see the second array printed, which is this 6 by 6 block right here. So the task is to find an hourglass shape, all the hourglass shapes within this block. So in this top left corner, you can see these ones that make out an hourglass shape. In this one, you can more clearly see two, but as you can imagine, there's obviously more than those two. So we are going to have to write code to find the hourglass indices, right? And then add the sum of the value of all the indices and print the maximum sum. So that's the task verbatim. Calculate the hourglass sum for every hourglass in A being the 2D array, and then print the maximum hourglass sum. So I've got two steps here. Code to find the hourglass indices, and then code to find the sum of the hourglass indices. I'm going to try to make this as easy to understand as I can, but here, if I can widen this, no. So on the second page right here, this isn't working so well. I have copied what you see right here in this output right here. So that being said, I'm just gonna open this full page. So right here, we're seeing the values or the variables stored at the indices, which are the memory locations in the data of the array. And then right here, I have listed the array. So looking at this, you might be confused, like, what am I looking at? It's just a bunch of numbers. Remember that these are just arrays within other arrays. So you have the first array, which is this vertical one, and then each of these arrays, the data stored at that array, instead of being an integer or a character or string, is just another array. And then the indices of that array or those arrays have values. So here we've got this 2, 3, 4, or the other in the output example, right, we saw 2, 4, 4, 2, 1, 2, 4, which in the sample output right here, all of those add to 19, and that is the maximum sum of this variable's hourglass form of indices. So I'm going to explain how we can get this hourglass shape by um, interacting with the indices of the array. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. So I've taken the indices and printed them, copied them to right here, and then I've taken the values. So these indices are equal to the 244, 2124, right? Those are those indices values. Now, what is this conglomeration of code right here? So what we have to do is determine if an indice is the size of the array minus 2. That is because this is a 6 by 6 array. So, that being said, just dealing with this 6 by 6 array, the indice I and j is going to be 3 and 2 for this top left 2 right here. And if we go up here, the I, right, we go down 0, 1, 2, 3, and then the j, so we're going into the array stored in an array, is 2. So 0, 1, 2, right? So that's the fourth value of the first array and the fourth or third value of the nested array, right? And then to get this hourglass form, we have to find the value of the integer to the right of that array. So how do we do that? Well, since in these nested arrays we're going right, we're going to adjust the indice of the second array. So that would be this j, right? You have I and j. So we're going to take array of I and j, which is 2, right? That's the value of that, and add it to this 4 right here, which is array of I, and then array of I, j plus 1. So that's 3, 3. So if we go up here, right, if I didn't print this vertically, but that would be, we go down to 3, so 0, 1, 2, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3 is this 4, and then array of I, j plus 2. So that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this original indice of j is 2, so j plus 1 goes over right 1, j plus 2 goes over right 2. To find this middle one, we do array of I plus 1, j plus 1. And so that goes down and right 1 off of this original 2. So down and right. And then for this bottom row, we do I plus 2 and then plus array of I plus 2j, array of I plus 2 plus, or and then j plus 1, and then array of I plus 2 and then j plus 2. So it's I plus 2, I plus 2 plus 1, I plus 2 plus 2. And then we need to store the value of the variables at these indices, right, which is 2, 4, 4, 2, 1, 2, 4. But that's step 2. So this is just, I copied this, put it right here. This is the max hourglass sum in A, because we're going to iterate over it. So this is how you just find A hourglass sum, right? And then you add those all together. So if we go down here and write how to write the code, we're going to define an integer called max, right? Max is going to be equal to 0. Iterate over I, and then the condition for I to stop looping is if the array dot, or the size of the array minus 2 is met, so that would be 4. And then the nested iteration is the same thing, except it's the array of I, the size of array of I minus 2. So the sum of the hourglass is equal to the values of the indices all added together, right? We create another integer, which will be the sum of hourglasses, so we can call this sum, right? If max is less than sum, so say this very first, we calculate the sum of this very first hourglass, which is 7. Then we iterate to the second one, third one, all the way down, and then we find this greater one, right? So we're going to store this one in max. None of these other hourglasses are greater than the first one we found until the last one. So if sum, right, at any time, or if max at any time is less than sum, we're going to transfer the value of sum to max. So initially sum is 7 and that hourglass has all ones, nothing is greater than that, and the last one is greater with a total value of 19. So because that sum is greater than our max, that sum becomes the max. And then we just have to output that max. So what does the array dot size of I or of j mean, right? So if I go down here and I just output array dot size, what is that going to do for us? It'll give us 6. because it's a 6 by 6 array, but if you didn't know the size of an array, you could do this. Right, so it's 6. Okay, so it's a lot of code. So I've gone ahead and written it. But up here we set our integer max. And then we have these two loops, two for loops, one to iterate over the first array and then one to iterate over the second. So this is the vertical array. It's horizontal, and then it becomes vertical once we nest this one inside of it. And all of the data, or the variables at its indices, become this nested array. And then we have this code, which finds all the hourglasses. It finds it, moves on to the next one because it's within the second loop. It takes the variables at these indices, adds them all up. So we got array of ij plus array ij plus 1, so on and so forth. And that is equal to sum. All right, so now what we need to do is output max, but first, if sum is greater than max, then max is equal to sum. Throw in a semicolon right here, no red, run it, and my output is 0. Why is my output 0? So the value of max is not being changed. Let's try this. Okay, so what I did there is this is an if statement right here. It's another way to write an if statement. So this question mark. So what comes before it, right? If sum is greater than max, max is equal to sum, and then we just make max is equal to it. I'm not completely sure why that works versus the if statement, but that makes it so that max is equal to max equaling sum. And then it outputs that. Submit this code. Failed these two test cases. Ooh. Okay, so those test cases, just wrong answer. What did I say? So those are for negative indices. I've got no clue what to do with that. If I figure it out, I'll retouch on that. But I've got no clue why it's not doing negative numbers. I'm not going to try to delve into that. But that's the video.